Welcome to Ayurveda and Spirituality with your host, Alakananda Ma, a renowned Ayurvedic expert and a graduate of a top London medical school. She is the principal of Alundi Ayurveda Gurukula, a unique apprenticeship-style school in Boulder, Colorado. She is a spiritual mother, teacher, flower essence maker, and storyteller. Join us as we uncover the timeless principles of Ayurveda, discover practical tips for enhancing vitality, and explore the deeper dimensions of spirituality that intertwine with the ancient science of life. Today on the podcast, we are sharing a recording from the archives.
First of all is the biological level. Obviously, relationships do occur quite significantly on the biological level, since relationships, especially according to my male-female relationships, are entirely essential for the reproduction of the species. So just as among the animal kingdom, so among human beings too, there's a biological level within which one-on-one relationships do occur that is, in terms, first of all, of reproduction. The other aspects to the biological level of relationships would just include clubbing together to meet our survival needs. So aside from simply reproducing as humans, we don't normally have the system, as among many other animals, where the female just gets impregnated and then she's on her own. And that's also due to the way that our species is, where we have the long period of dependency on the parents. It's not like the deer that can get up and run with the herd from the day they're born. So because of that, it's preferable. I know it's falling apart nowadays. This level is falling apart quite a bit nowadays, but generally speaking, it would be preferable to have two people to help in that arduous task of taking care of these little dependent beings. So that also biologically valuable in terms of food and shelter and general survival as well as reproduction. That's a kind of very basic level in which we come together in relationship and are in many ways actually designed to stay together in relationship simply because it works better for us to survive that way. We don't survive as well simply on our own, as we do if we're in relationship, whether that's the one-on-one, like sexual relationship or mating situation, or and other simple relationships that we create that are going to help us to get by. It's like the old example, I think I remember my Anglican confirmation classes, that the father had a fire going, and he took the tongs and he pulled one log out of the fire and put it on the hearth, and then of course it went out. So he's just kind of demonstrating in a very simple way, in order to survive, we're not really designed to be loners. So that there's this very simple biological level of why we form relationships that are, so to say, grounded in the first chakra and in our need to come together and form lasting bonds in order to survive. Next level of consciousness, and in which our relationships can happen, is the conventional level. And that has been a very permeating level of relationships for very many millennia. So in terms of the conventional level, relationships are created in order to solidify the structure of society and keep things together. So the conventional level of relationship in many ways is very, very important. So on this level, we've gone beyond the biological level where we're just sticking together first so we can reproduce, and then also so that we can support each other's survival. Now we're sticking together to form social units. It's like the normative family, right? The normative family has to do with the conventional level of consciousness. Okay, it's normative because why is the normative family? The normative family is a mommy, a daddy, and kids, right? In the American society, that's the normative family. Before that wasn't even a normative family at all. A normative family was aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents, and that was a normative family before. But now we have a different kind of normative family. Why is the normative family normative? Because that's what's going to maintain a status quo and keep things going exactly the way they've always gone. At the conventional level, lots of different factors become important in terms of relationships. Who inherits what? Land. Especially as we start to get into stages of human evolution where we start to own and claim land, the conventional level of relationships becomes extremely important in determining who's going to get what. So in inheritance, whether you're looking at kinship groups among fairly simple tribes, or whether you're looking at like the British royal family, it's all about relationships being built to make alliances and who gets what. You know, like the King of England marrying a French princess so that they get a stake in France. Right? We're forming alliances. And at this stage, relationships have a lot to do with families and alliances and making a good match, all the stuff that Jane Austen talks about. She's always talking about relationships on the conventional level. That none of the things that we tend to think of as important in relationships are that important in terms of the conventional level. It's much more about these alliances, upholding society, how we are seen. One of my patients in Florida was bisexual, and that doesn't wash in Florida, down on the buckle of the Bible Belt. So he went to several years of therapy to help him to pick one direction or the other. And he said to me, okay, so although I am really bisexual, I picked being gay because my neighbors in my suburb in Florida can put up with me living with one man, but they couldn't put up with me being in a ménage à trois. That's going to freak them out. But what this person actually needs to do is have a husband and a wife. But that is so far out of the conventional level that the poor man actually went to therapy to change himself off of who he genuinely was so that he could be perceived as something, if not normal, at least sort of somewhat acceptable to his neighbors. So that, and that's another part of the whole conventional level, is we're doing what will be acceptable to others, what's going to fit us in with the whole. How are we going to make ourselves conform? This has governed relationships for a very, very long time. It's also made relationships tend to be, if not happy, at least very stable, because there's a lot at stake in terms of money and alliances and so on. Typically, until quite recently, relationships on the conventional level are determined by elders. Because young people are hot-headed, and you know how it is. I've seen so many times people fall in love, and I see their charts, and it's like, this is never going to work. But if you tell them this is never going to work, simply they'll hate you forever. But 6 months later, when it all falls apart, they'll find that out for themselves. On the conventional level, you don't want that kind of thing to happen, because in the meantime, all the inheritances and alliances are getting messed up. So on the conventional level, relationships are about putting people together to put families, countries, land, money together, and to fulfill expectations of society, and to create these stable units that will be recognizable to others. Now, some of you have heard earlier talks, such as especially my first talk, which was about time and the ages, and how every 2,000 years we go through an evolution in which a different paradigm reflected by a specific astrological sign comes into effect. And there are astronomical and scientific reasons why that happens, that has to do with the sun's journey through the entire galaxy. So 2,000 years ago, we entered the age of Pisces. And the age of Pisces was the dawning age of individuality. And what began to emerge during the age of Pisces was a new set of demands and expectations in terms of relationship. Before that, a relationship simply was about these things: being able to reproduce, being able to stick together and survive in the hostile world, jungle or desert or wherever we are, and then once we figured out how to survive, being able to keep it all together for a larger society that's made up of reasonably standard units that'll survive. Now, as the age of the individual begins to come into effect, relationships gradually begin to happen on the individual level of consciousness. So this is a huge evolution. If relationships happen on the individual level of consciousness, such relationships are about individual fulfillment, individual happiness, reaching individual goals. It's taken most of the last 2,000 years to get to that point. And we, all of us in this room, belong to generations that made our relationships mainly based upon the individual level of consciousness. Everyone born from the 1940s on started to make relationships based on their freedom, their choice, their satisfaction, and the individual level of consciousness. It sounds great. However, we also may have noticed that everyone born from the 1940s on has suffered from relationship instability. Actually, Satyananda and I feel like we would like to belong to a support group for the tiny minority of monogamous, never divorced people. Because in our generation, we are such a... You mean you've actually always been with the same person? Yes. Wow, we are such an extremely small minority. Because having taken relationships into the individual level, it's introduced this kind of new instability. How do we really make relationships on the individual level of consciousness? What happens to a lot of people, especially my age people, but I think even also to younger people, is around 18, you get married on the conventional level. Because your parents expected it and it was the thing to do. So you do your conventional level marriage, you have the kids, you do the thing, and then you start to wake up and it hits you that other people aren't doing this anymore. And that you aren't really happy and this isn't working, and maybe it's really, really not working. Maybe it's really bad because your parents didn't pick your conventional level partner. And an astrologer didn't vet your conventional level partner, so it's maybe really, really bad. And so you want out of it, and then you're going to pick your next person based on the individual level. What am I really looking for? So the thing with the individual level and it's almost, you might say, a non sequitur to try to make a relationship on the individual level, because what we're looking for, and our big stumbling block that we're having right now in relationships, is that I am looking for my individual happiness and my individual fulfillment in my relationship. And I've been doing Ayurveda clinic for, how many years is it? Since 89, 16 years or something. And as I see person after person coming to see me, I see that everybody wants a relationship, like it's an object. Like they want a house, a car, a job, and a relationship. Because I'm supposed to be happy when I get a relationship. And I usually say something like, well, just come hang out at the ashram and all your wishes will be fulfilled. I don't do matchmaking, but everyone who's ever lived here either gets married or gets pregnant or falls in love or something. So just hang out around us. Something will get fulfilled. Sometimes they get pregnant without getting married, and sometimes they get married without getting pregnant, but something usually happens in terms of abundance. So the trap that we've fallen into in terms of bringing the individual level to bear on relationships, if we're trying to do something, it's fundamentally impossible. So we're trying to unite our life with someone else with basically the sole goal that I will then be more happy. Because I'm going to get what I want. And meantime, we have a lot of other programs going. Women, you know that your actual job is to make a man happy. And then you'll make some man, these are phrases, right? You will make some man happy. So, on the one hand, your newly liberated, feminist, individual consciousness wants to get that Mr. Right, that Prince Charming, that white knight who's going to make me happy. And at the same time, you're running this whole other program in which your whole mission in life is to make someone else happy. That's generally a recipe for supreme unhappiness all round. Because you're putting it across that you're there to make this other person, this other guy, or maybe even this other girl happy. Even if you're going to get married to a woman, you still believe you're there to make someone else happy, even if it's not a man, right? You still feel your purpose is to make them happy, but underneath it all, they're actually supposed to make you happy. They're supposed to take away all your misery. You're supposed to get married, right, and live happily ever after. There is a marriage after which we live happily ever after, of which the stories speak. It is the inner marriage of sun and moon. But there is no outer wedding which leads to happiness, that unalloyed state of happiness, because that's where the work begins. And when we're jumping into this on these wrong premises, with all this confusion, we're going to be causing a lot of misery. Because it isn't somebody else's job to make you happy. It isn't actually your job in life to make somebody else happy. Because when, and again, this is women especially, whoever you're with, we feel our job is to make him or her happy. We want to make that person happy. But we're approaching it at a level of ego. So that means now we're going to get entangled in this other person's ego. That's who we're trying to make happy. Now there's a lot of levels to this. First of all, the person you're trying to make happy doesn't exist. The ego is simply a set of conditioned responses. There's no substance. There's no reality. So that the person we've solidified in our mind as the goal of we should make this person happy doesn't exist. All that's there is this set of conditioned responses. And you push the wrong button, they're not happy. Furthermore, this is samsara. This is the realm of unsatisfactoriness. According to the teachings of Buddhism, the basic things we know about this life is that it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and void of essence. So here you are, and You're impermanent, unsatisfactory, and void of essence, and so is your beloved. And you're trying to make them happy. But it's impossible for them to be happy because life is imbued with suffering. So sometimes they have a headache. So I was still, and it's really hard to not be caught up in this. Let me put it that way. When Sadananda went away for his 3-month retreat, it helped. It helped both of us. We hadn't planned it as because we needed a separation. He just wanted to go on retreat. But it was very interesting change of perspective to get a little space and to see how caught up I am oftentimes in feeling responsible. If he's in a bad mood, can the poor man not be in a bad mood sometimes without it having to be like a cosmic drama in my life? Could I not give a little space that even the most wonderful person in the world sometimes gets out of bed on the wrong side, just like I do? Once we burden ourselves with a responsibility, right, for someone else's moods, you got it right. Not only do we make ourselves unhappy, we're making them very unhappy. Because then they can't just have their mood. Because it's like, did I do something wrong? So now not only they're having their mood, which they could just have or they could be over with, but now they're dealing with me feeling a failure because they got out of bed the wrong side. A lot of pennies are dropping around and about. You all are getting it, right? We can't make anyone happy because the nature of samsara, there's this ego that we're trying to make happy doesn't exist except as experiences of suffering caused by our own sense of being separate from the whole. And yet these two egos are trying to make each other happy. We can't really do that. It's not possible. It's not possible that we can make someone happy. Nor is it possible, now, men. Okay, we've got 3 men. 3 men in the room. As a man, you have been programmed to feel that it is someone else's job to make you happy. Just as the women have actually been programmed to feel it's your job to make someone happy. You've been programmed to feel that it is your job to get a partner that will make you happy. But they can't. For exactly the same reason. It's not their job to make you happy. And your unhappiness is your own and comes out of all the things we just talked about. On this ego level, happiness is not possible for egos. Everyone is really getting it. Because all your ego is the way you make yourself miserable on a daily basis. But by enslaving yourself to somebody else's ego is a recipe for misery.
I've heard ego called edging God out. Just not letting something go.
Right. It's an illusory construct of who we are that doesn't really exist. And now my illusory construct is trying to make someone else's illusory construct happy, when the nature of that illusory construct is that it's fundamentally always not happy. So now we're having a huge problem because we're trying to do an impossible thing.
You know, with intangibles, basically, there's nothing there.
There is no one really there that I can be made happy. You can have a good relationship on the individual level if you get over the idea that it's the person's ego that you're serving, and that they're serving your ego. To be bound to someone's ego is a very bad thing. It ends up with the kind of situation where we had one friend in India who was so kind. He would do anything for anyone, which means he would get heroin for a junkie and he would get clients for a prostitute. That kind of serving is not good. But that's actually what we get into when we misunderstand the individual level of relating. We get into buying into all the other person's bad habits and patterns and dragging each other slowly downwards more and more and more. Is it making sense so far? It's possible to have a good relationship on the individual level of consciousness in which I help you to fulfill what you're about and you help me to fulfill what I'm about. If we keep the idea that we need to make each other happy out of it, I would say one of the levels of the relationship that Sadananda and I have definitely involves the individual level, and involves that if he has an idea of something that he wants to do or accomplish or fulfill, that I would go out of my way to assist that. Because he's a person, in that sense different from me, and if he wants to do something like go on retreat for 3 months, then I'll go to the computer and print off the forms and help him fill them out and figure out the money for him and send him stuff when he's on retreat because he wants to do it, so I'm helping him. So you could say that is about an individual level. And same way, he's going to try to help me to do or accomplish the things that are good for me.
That's friendship. To me, it's love and friendship.
Yeah. Friendship is very important on the individual level. You also can have a good relationship on the individual level. Sorry, I lost my thread a little bit. That, I just completely lost my thread.
Assist each other in accomplishing what? So how do you know it's not supporting the ego?
But if you really are if you really know that person and you know you have some vision of who they really are, and that's part of having a good relationship on the individual level, is being able to reflect to the person who they actually are. And out of that, you're going to be able to see, what are things that are truly about who they really are. This is someone that you can sit down and talk to, and you can get a perspective with them about who they are. I'm going to ask that we hold questions and comments to the end, just because I get in a flow, and then if other things come in, then I kind of lose the flow, and then I can't quite hear what's coming in and might need to be said next. So getting a perspective that we could have a good relationship on the individual level if we're committed to help each other to grow. We enjoy some things that we like doing together, so we can have fun together. I mean, that's another important piece with Sadananda and me. If you look at our composite chart that shows our relationship, the sun in Aquarius talks all about the next level that we're going to talk about right now, but the moon, we have a full moon in our composite chart because we're both full moons. The moon in Leo in the 5th house, that's a comfort zone that, okay, your relationship is all about this next level that we're just going to talk about, but you can always come home to this comfort level that you have a really good relationship that is fulfilling of individuals who have fun together, because we pretty much love to do all the same things, like gardening or hiking in the mountains or singing together or listening to Indian music or enjoying the same books. We love to do a lot of the same things together. So in that way, sure, that there's the individual satisfaction that I can have fun with this person, we can grow, we can teach each other. The problem is, if we limit our relationship to the individual level, that may be a ticking time bomb in our relationship. Okay, because at a certain point, we're going to say, this person doesn't serve me anymore. Because now I got into yoga. I've heard this maybe not hundreds of times, but definitely scores of times in my clinic. Now that I got into yoga, I don't like my husband anymore. Because he's not into yoga.
You're going to blame the teacher.
We're not going to blame the yoga teacher. But you know what I'm saying? Like, now I'm off on this whole new path, and this person doesn't serve me anymore. Because there's a way in which this relationship was always about me. And that's the whole, what Ken Wilber calls the boomeritis thing that came in to the people born in the 40s and afterwards as the first generations of people ever in the history of the world for whom it was about me. In poor countries, it's still not about me. Because like my niece said after she went to Honduras, she said that there is a big difference between the two cultures. She was 16 when she went there. I said, sum it up for me, Sarah. She said, in America, everyone's trying to get what they want. She said, but in Honduras, everyone's just trying to get what they need. So in Honduras, it's not about me. But for us, privileged people, from those born from the 40s on, it's been about me. It's all so much about me. We are very, very narcissistic people. Pluto and Leo on, it's all about me, and our relationships are so much about me. So that's a huge part of the instability in our relationships, because if it doesn't suit me, the new me, my new thing, I'm going to leave it. I'm not talking about abuse or dangerous or negative situations that have to be, you have to change, you have to leave it or leave it. I mean, if it's a dangerous negative relationship, you either have to leave that relationship or there have to be dramatic, significant, deep-seated changes that will make it a new relationship, albeit with the same person. But I'm talking about just the generalized instability that we have in our relationships because fundamentally it's so much about me. Is this making sense at all? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's too much, that there's too much of the me that is coming in. But that fundamental kind of selfishness leads us to become serial monogamists. This is our life. We are serial monogamists. We want that one relationship with that one special person. We want to be true to that person. We're true to that person as long as that person works for us. And then, that one's done, and we're on to the next. As long as we're on the individual level, we're bound to have this life of serial monogamy. Because we're growing and people grow, and sometimes they grow together in parallel, but at a certain point you might grow in a different direction. And then what's going to work best for the me at that point is going to be somebody else. Or like the standard things, like once the woman starts to get older and wrinkly and the breasts start to sag and there are gray hairs, the younger wife is starting to look like a really good idea, because I would look a lot better with my arm around someone that was firmer and tighter and brighter and smoother at this point. As long as it's all about me, these things are going to happen. This is the kind of tangle that we've got ourselves into. Having come to the individual level but not being really clear about it. Like I say, it's possible to have a good relationship on the individual level. I am not convinced that it is possible to have a good relationship that is sustained solely by the individual level. Like I gave the example of Sadananda and myself. We have an awfully good individual level relationship because that is secondary. It's like something to relax into, and on the odd weekend every 2 months where we're not serving the whole rest of the world. That actually is the person that you want to hang out and have fun with. That actually is the person who's going to bust you about your stuff. That is the person that you would ask first about what to do about something. That's the person you like the most and the person who knows you the best. That's the person who will help you to accomplish your goals in life very, very selflessly. But you'll also help them with equal selflessness to accomplish their goals. Whether we can have that on its own in isolation, I very much doubt, especially because we're so permeated with this narcissism. There's this boomeritis, this sense of wanting everything to go around me, and we're so obsessed with our objectified notion of a relationship as something I should have. Like my meditation teacher, Christina Feldman, said, we all want the 3 jewels of the modern world: the ideal job, the ideal lifestyle, and the ideal relationship. And it's like these 3 things that we all think we should get. But most people in the world don't have the time or energy to worry about any of those 3 things, because they're just thinking about feeding their children or getting out of the way of the bombs. But we're so privileged as living in the heart of empire, right? Living off the fat of the world. Even if we think we're poor, we're still basically living off the fat of the rest of the world, because you can get cheap gas and cheap clothes and all these things that other people's sweat and blood and life have gone into. And so we're so about me. I think it's very hard for us to have a healthy, functional relationship that's limited to the individual level. And so in comes the next step as we come into this new paradigm of the dawning Age of Aquarius. It brings in the new level of consciousness in terms of our relationships, bringing about our relationships on the transpersonal level of consciousness. On this level, the relationship is no longer about me, and it's no longer about us. It's just like when I was describing the composite chart of when you put Sadananda and me together. The moon, which is like a comfort zone and a support, is in the 5th house in Leo. It's like we've got the ultimate baby boomers paradise being together because we like all the same things and we really like each other. But the main point is we've got our sun in Aquarius in the 11th house that says, you will serve the world in complete altruism and always belong to a much larger whole. So Sadananda and I have lived together in community since 1997. We have never had our own place or our own life, our own home, or any privacy unless everyone happens to be away because it's Christmas. But since 1997, it's all been about extending into a larger community. Bringing the transpersonal level into relationships gives the potential that now the relationship won't get stuck on the individual level about being all about me. Because now we have a higher purpose in being together. Something that I've seen about the coming in of the transpersonal level of relationships is speaking to the gays and lesbians in the room and those who are not in the room, but who may hear the tape or may hear about this. Your time is coming. Okay, your time is coming, because a gay or lesbian relationship isn't about the biological level very much at all. It's absolutely not about the conventional level. It's X'd out of the conventional level. Starts to come in on the individual level, but if it's tenuous because you haven't got these other levels and you're like trying to come together on the individual level. As the transpersonal level comes in, the value of same-sex relationships will manifest. Because these are relationships that are special, that are different, that are not necessarily about family in the usual sense, getting together to have your kids and raise your kids. Not necessarily about that. Sometimes it's about that. People sometimes bring kids into such relationships or other developments that may occur, but in general, these relationships are about something different or special. That I believe that same-sex relationships will shed some kind of a beacon of light on finding our path into transpersonal relationships. by virtue of, it's a charism of being in some way different, not being encumbered by all that baggage of the conventional level. And nobody ever tells you, if you're a man, nobody ever tells you that one day you're going to grow up and make some man happy. Yeah. No one has ever told you that. You're not encumbered with all that baggage. So I think that they're going to shed a lot of light on the transpersonal level because of the lack of what so many of the rest of us have to cut through in terms of we're still bringing all that baggage from the conventional level with us as we're trying to get to the transpersonal level. So I think gay marriages are very important. One thing is, there's two separate issues, having the privileges of a married person, but having the sacredness, which is really what the Christian right wants to say. Never make such a thing sacred. I'm saying the sacredness should be very important because we want to honor all kinds of relationships on the transpersonal level as we're going forward together, and we need everybody's help. So same-sex couple can be bringing a lot of light to bear, stepping out of just the gratification level of the individual thing, coming into, yes, we are here to help all the rest of you bring in this higher level. I've seen this in my visions and intuitions, and I think it's going to be important. Let us all support each other so that we can work together. So as we're coming into the transpersonal level, it's starting to see our relationship in a larger context. No, it's not just about me anymore, and it's not just about us anymore. It's not about anyone making anyone happy, but it's about how are we going to serve a larger whole. On the transpersonal level, we don't get caught up with the other person's ego. The other person becomes a door through which we step. Like Sadananda's love for me or my love for him is a door that opens the heart. Especially from Sadananda's side, because he's a man, so it takes more effort for a man to work with the heart, to open the heart. The love he has for me opens his heart, and there's the whole world. It doesn't stop with me, because on the transpersonal level, the individual is transparent. The individual themselves contains the whole world. So you're going to love that one person that opens your heart in love, and you can step through. This is where falling in love with other people can also have the value. For men especially, if you really admit it, you fall in love all the time. You fall in love every day. You fall in love all the time with the cashier or the florist, a student or whatever. You don't go through with it, but you fall in love all the time. Now, through using the transpersonal level, you can say, wow, I just fell in love with that cashier in the health food store. My heart is open. I'm going to walk right through her to the whole world. My heart is just a little more open now. Because I saw divine beauty in this one person, I'm going to walk right through that. And now I'm that little bit more open to the whole world. And if your beloved is a woman, the advantage is when you come home, because a woman is so multifarious, you're going to be able to see the beauty of that cashier's smile in your beloved, and she's going to look more beautiful than before. Because that's the nature of woman, is that she's very multifarious. So any woman is all women. So whoever you just fell in love with, you can come home and see your beloved as that person, especially if she's a woman, because she has that multifariousness. You can also walk through that person to the whole world. So whether it's the person that you're committed to for life, or whether it's the person that you fell for totally on the bus, and you'll never see them again, if you can make that a transpersonal connection, through meeting that person, now you opened that bit more to the whole world in service. Can you love every single person at least just as much as you love that person who just fell for it on the bus, that you'll never ever see again? On the transpersonal level, yes, the individual becomes transparent. We are doors to each other's hearts to guide each other to a much vaster love that includes everybody. So when we're relating on the transpersonal level, it's a different paradigm than what we're accustomed to think about. You know, on the biological level, it's like two people both in the field with their hoe, because you're getting it hoed twice as fast together. And one of them's got a baby on her back, and you're both hoeing the field. As you come into the conventional and then the individual level, it's a focus on these two people. On the conventional level, it's two families, really, coming together through two individuals. Where we've got to now, it's two individuals, face to face, gazing in each other's eyes, looking for that special spark, that special reflection, that romantic moment. How long are we going to be able to gaze in one person's eyes and be totally happy? One day we'll be bored. We want to gaze at a different pair of eyes. On the transpersonal level, it's two people, hand in hand, embracing the world. That's much more durable. Because forever you can hold this person's hand knowing that you can embrace the world much better. Because two people, it's like, if you take Alakananda and Sadananda and you put them together, that's not 1 plus 1. That's Sadananda to the power of Alakananda. Yeah, it's exponential what happens when the two people come together. The power of a genuine spiritual couple, remember, the genuine couple of any gender combination, is inestimable, which is why most religions don't really want this to happen. Why is society going to stick with the normative family? Because then we have less energy. If we get out of worrying about normative family and we're focusing on two people hand in hand embracing the world, there's incredible power. And we can hold that one person's hand forever, because we know that what we can do together is so much more. Like tonight I didn't have Sadananda here, so I'm having to be him and me, but I still wouldn't have even been able to do that part without him teaching me to do that part. Like I learned that meditation from him, or he taught me to sing. But if he was here too, it's way better, because it's the two of us together can serve so much more effectively. You would never want to dissolve a bond like that because of how much you have to offer. There was a dream that I had many years ago where we were back in Alandi at Raghudas's tomb. And then we were in that village, and there was a big table spread, and it was groaning with huge, delicious pots of food that we had cooked. And there was a voiceover came on in the dream and said, "This is the best food for 1,000 miles." Now, many people have eaten at my table and say that actually it's the best food for many thousands of miles, but that's not the point exactly. The point is what a couple who come together on a transpersonal level are offering to the world is the best food for 1,000 miles. Is this making sense? Because it's a much greater offering that you're able to make between the two of you. Then that's the point of having a relationship on that level. And if it's not a relationship of a marriage or a significant other because you're a single, well, friendship is a greatly underestimated type of relationship that comes into its own in the Age of Aquarius, which is about friendship. So we can still have transpersonal relationships if we're singles as well. That means coming together with our friends with a genuine commitment that is based on more than just that we like each other and we have fun together, but is also based on how we could really serve together as friends. So it's not limited that only couples can have transpersonal relationships, but also singles, as friends, as groups of friends, and so on, can also have very valuable transpersonal relationships and still offer that extra something that comes from our friendship. Friendship isn't important so much on the biological level, isn't supported on the conventional level, is tenuous on the individual level, but it's spiritual friendship is crucial on the transpersonal level. So not to make anyone feel sad if you're a single, that means you can't have this experience with your friends. If you have friends that are also on the path, this is bringing in the Age of Aquarius by honoring our friendship. Through our friendship, we can really serve. Through building community. So that there's lots of ways we can relate transpersonally, whether it's with our significant other or partner of any gender, or partners. If we're bisexual and we do really need a ménage à trois, I think there'll be more coming up to be more openness in the Age of Aquarius to different people's needs and manifestations, whether it's with your best friend or your group of friends or people you come together in community. If we make commitment among each other, we can still create this kind of transpersonal relationships. It does rest upon having a ground of commitment. Otherwise it gets tenuous and it drifts apart. There has to be a real commitment that we know we are coming together to serve. So Sun and Under's contract is really different than any kind of like marriage vows you read in church or anything, because it's about the fact that we're coming together to serve each other's spiritual development and to serve the mother and be effective at her service together. You can do that with or without it being a sexual relationship or a significant other, but any person or people with whom you're united in your goals and vision and ideals, we can form these kind of transpersonal relationships and serve together better and know that real fulfillment and satisfaction that comes from linking together to embrace the world. I learned a very valuable thing from National Geographical, and I also had some email correspondence with Professor Ambrose, who was featured in this short article in National Geographical. 72,000 years ago, a supervolcano, Mount Toba, erupted. Hundreds of thousands of times of Mount Helen's eruption. Supervolcano. It was an immense cataclysm. There's a supervolcano under Yellowstone. It will erupt soon, but that's soon in geological time, somewhere in the next 50,000 years. That's geologically really soon. It'll blow, but not necessarily soon in our insignificant little lifetimes. But for the human beings that were alive when Mount Toba blew, they experienced an immense cataclysm as the entire atmosphere was filled with dust, and it changed the climate, and fire and brimstone rained down everywhere, and numerous species were extincted. And human beings were almost extincted. And Professor Ambrose pointed out, he's demonstrated that at that time we passed through an evolutionary bottleneck. That prior to Mount Toba, we were biologically diverse. And ever since Mount Toba, we have no diversity. We have all the marks of a species, just like if the elephants came back at this point. and manage, if they're able to come back and not become extinct, they'll come back from such a few, they won't have biodiversity. We don't have any biological diversity. We've all descended from a very few people. Those are the handful of people that were the survivors of Toba's eruption. How did that handful of people survive? Professor Ambrose says that those people survived because they were the ones who developed gift-giving, technology sharing, cooperation, and altruism. That those primitive Paleolithic people forged bonds through trade and gift-giving and cooperation across vast differences. They shared their technology. They cooperated. They didn't compete. The ones that competed died, but the ones that cooperated survived. We are all descended from such people. So no to the people that think they're going to store a lot of food and have a lot of guns to guard their food from others. We will never survive like this. Such people are not going to survive. We will only survive through altruism. We stand, as our ancestors 72,000 years ago stand, on the brink of extinction. Then because there were so few, and now because we're so many, that we have brought ourselves to the brink of extinction. We can only pull ourselves back, as those early ancestors did. Not through me first, my survival, it's all about me. Sadhguru and I sincerely asked Pomlop Rinpoche, if there was a famine and there was no food, should we, since we're older and we don't have children, should we just not eat so that other people could have the food? And he knew our question was sincere because he considered it very sincerely, and he said, well, you could choose to not eat because you're older and don't have children, but if you think you can still do some spiritual practice and help people, then it's all right for you to eat too. It wouldn't be wrong. But we sincerely were asking like this. That's how we're going to survive, is when we're thinking like this. No, there's only one piece of bread. You have it because you're nursing. It's okay, don't worry about me. You should have it. Then your baby will live. That's how people thought at the time of Mount Toba, right? Let's give the food to the mother with the baby because she's our future. By thinking like that. And then we just invented this really cool new type of stone hammer. Let's send one to those people 200 miles away so they can make one too. So they can do better as well. This way they survive. This way we can survive through altruism and through...
Thank you for tuning in to Ayurveda and Spirituality with Alakananda Ma. We hope today's exploration has ignited a spark of curiosity and insight within you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. For more enlightening discussions and practical wisdom on Ayurveda and spirituality, subscribe and join our Facebook group, Alundi Ayurveda. To allow us to continue sharing valuable content, consider donating to Alundi Ashram. The links will be in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk the path of Ayurveda with grace and embrace the light of spiritual wisdom in your journey. Trayambakam yajamahe